Welcome to the Wewakai Nation Community Wildfire Resiliency Plan with a focus on Quinsam Reserve and Cape Mudge Village. This is a video presentation that is a summary of and supplementary to a formal report submitted to the Wewakai Nation. My name is Louis Oreo. I'm a professional forester and associate at B.A. Blackwell & Associates. Established in 1988, Blackwell provides integrated forestry and environmental consulting services to a wide range of clients. The firm has completed over 100 community wildfire protection and resiliency plans since 2005, 10 of which, including this one, were recently completed within the last year. These wildfire resiliency plans provide recommendation and action items categorized by the 7 FireSmart disciplines. Having advised and supported FireSmart education events and materials, and planned and implemented FireSmart assessment projects for a number of clients, we have gained extensive experience and knowledge of the FireSmart principles and their application. Funding to develop this Community Wildfire Resiliency Plan was acquired through the Union of BC Municipalities Community Resiliency Investment Program. The purpose of this Wildfire Resiliency Plan is to identify and update the wildfire risks specific to Quinsam Reserve and Cape Mudge Village's wildland-urban interface, to describe the potential consequences of wildfire to the communities, and to examine options and strategies to reduce the wildfire risks to both. The goals are for this resiliency plan and its associated action plan to be used as a framework to increase the effectiveness of fire suppression and emergency response, reduce potential impacts of losses to life, structures, and critical infrastructure from wildfire, and to reduce wildfire behavior threats within both communities. The wildland-urban interface is the focus area of wildfire resiliency plans. It represents the place where the developed community meets the forested wildland. This is sometimes a hard edge, but more often is a blurred one. To determine the focus area for this report, which is known as the eligible wildland-urban interface, a 1 kilometer buffer surrounding a set structure density is created. This is shown on the map as the area surrounded by a red dashed outline. The wildland-urban interface for both communities includes private property, private managed forest land, crown land under various forest licenses, municipal land, and federal land. In general, 14% of Quinsam's wildland-urban interface is reserve land, and 26% of Cape Mudge Village's wildland-urban interface is reserve land. While Wewakai Nation can directly implement recommendations within its reservation boundaries, its role is limited to one of an advocate for those recommendations directed outside of them. It is important to note that the UBCM grant funding for this project does not allow for analysis of private land. The local wildfire threat assessment process, which determines fire threat by threat classes within the wildland-urban interface, incorporates several key inputs for its analysis. These include updated forest fuel types from field assessments, proximity of fuels to the community, consideration of topography, knowing that fires travel quickly and more easily uphill versus flatter terrain, and analysis of fire spread patterns from data gathered by the most representative BC Wildfire Service fire weather station. The result of the fire threat analysis shows that, for the Quinsam Reserve wildland-urban interface, which is the map on this slide, that 53% is low or very low threat class, shown on the map in green. This denotes developed and undeveloped land that will not support significant wildfire spread. 5% of the WUI is moderate threat class, shown on the map in yellow. This denotes developed and undeveloped land that will support surface fires, but they are largely unthreatening to homes and structures. There are no areas within the Quinsam Reserve's wildland-urban interface with high and extreme threat classes. On this map, the areas in gray are private land. The result of the fire threat analysis for Cape Mudge Village's wildland-urban interface shows that 52% is low or very low threat classes, again shown in green, 16% is moderate threat class, again shown in yellow, and 1% is high and extreme threat classes, shown in orange. Again on this map, the areas in gray are private land. Since most homes in each community are part of individual and somewhat isolated neighborhoods, and the most likely ignition source of a wildfire, as determined from historical wildfire ignition source data, is from human activity versus lightning, a focus on fire-smart education, building materials, and vegetation management around homes and critical infrastructure are the most important factors towards people, structures, and homes surviving a wildfire event, as well as also them not being a trigger source for one that then moves out into the landscape from the community. FireSmart is the comprehensive, nationally accepted set of principles, practices, and programs for reducing losses from wildfire. The overarching goal of FireSmart is to encourage communities and citizens to adopt and conduct practices to mitigate the negative impacts of wildfire on property. Provincial funding programs can be leveraged to support implementation of many of the recommendations given within this plan. Overall, 34 recommendations and action items have been proposed and are addressed wholly in the represented FireSmart sections of the main document. The following is a summary of the highest priority ones. Public education and outreach play a critical role in helping a community prepare for and prevent a wildfire. This discipline often supports the successful implementation of the other FireSmart disciplines by building awareness and understanding within both residents and visitors. Weawakai Nation and the Campbell River Fire Department applied jointly to the FireSmart Community Funding and Supports Program this year for items such as FireSmart education and community events and home and critical infrastructure assessments on the Quinson Reserve. Weawakai Nation should look to apply similar coordination and partnership with the Cape Mudge Village and the Quadra Island Fire Department. Additionally, it is recommended that Weawakai Nation promote FireSmart approaches for wildfire risk reduction to citizens through FireSmart workshops, open houses, and/or presentations. Additionally, it's recommended that Weawakai Nation develop a FireSmart or wildfire preparedness page on their main website. This would include links to FireSmart BC and other relevant wildfire resources. Legislation and planning regulations are effective tools for reducing wildfire risk due to ease of communication and enforcement. It is recommended that Weawakai Nation complete updates of this wildfire resiliency plan as required. Triggers for this would include major changes within the wildland-urban interface, such as ones to the forested landscape or development expansion. A review and summary of Weawakai Nation's laws and regulations relevant to wildfire risk and emergency planning is provided in the main document. Actions such as reviewing zoning laws through a wildfire and FireSmart lens to assess where they inadvertently contribute to fire risk and then amending them to reduce that risk can help accomplish the goal of a more wildfire resilient community. One example would be updating the Weawakai Nation 2015 residential zoning law to include a wildland-urban interface zone for both Cape Mudge Village and Quinson Reserve and embed FireSmart principles into it. Identifying and linking stakeholders increases funding opportunities and can allow for Weawakai Nation to obtain valuable local wildfire knowledge. A Community FireSmart Resiliency Committee reflects the key planners and responders most involved in local FireSmart, wildfire resiliency planning, and wildfire and emergency response specific to the region. They often include local fire chiefs, members of BC Wildfire Service, and land managers. It is recommended that one staff member from both Cape Mudge Village and Quinson Reserve join local wildfire resilient communities. For Cape Mudge Village, this would be the Quadra Island Community FireSmart Resiliency Committee. For Quinson Reserve, they should lobby for the City of Campbell River to create one that they can join. Additionally, a recent CWRP for the Strathcona Regional District Electoral Area D has a proposed resiliency committee that Weawakai Nation could also join. Additionally, after the planned home and critical infrastructure FireSmart assessments for Cape Mudge Village and Quinson Reserve are completed, recommendations should be implemented. All staff who are expected to participate in wildfire response and recovery for Weawakai Nation should be appropriately trained. This includes staff, community members, and members of the fire departments contracted to provide protection services to the reserve lands. It is recommended Weawakai Nation provide incident command system training to those persons most directly involved in managing and coordinating emergency response. Other cross-training includes FireSmart specific courses. One example is local fire smart training, which can be done by anyone but is most recommended for government staff. This course provides knowledge and resources they can use to engage with residents on fire smart initiatives and plan community fire smart events. When several wildfire emergencies are taking place throughout the province, BC Wildfire Service resource availability may become scarce. Therefore, government wildfire preparedness and resource availability are critical components of community wildfire resilience. Individuals and agencies need to be ready to act. Weewakai Nation should engage with BC Wildfire Service to assist in reviewing and checking the compatibility of all the sprinkler units that have been made in Cape Mudge Village. Also, they should look to BC Wildfire Service to recommend other firefighting equipment Cape Mudge Village and Quinson Reserve could purchase. Furthermore, scheduling training on the newly purchased and current firefighting equipment in both communities is recommended. For efficiency during emergencies, Weewakai Nation should consider incorporating or streamlining emergency action guidelines used by adjacent jurisdictions, such as the Strathcona Regional District or the City of Campbell River. Fuel, which is available vegetation for a wildfire to burn, is one of the key aspects of the fire environment that can be modified to reduce wildfire threat. Fuel management can largely be accomplished through two different activities. The first is residential scale fire smart landscaping. This refers to the removal or reduction of flammable landscaping plants to create more fire resistant areas surrounding homes and infrastructure. This is known as the Home or Critical Infrastructure Ignition Zone, as shown in the image on this slide. Specific vegetation management requirements are detailed for each zone. Weewakai Nation should look to apply for funding to implement a community neighborhood chipping program for residents to safely and at no cost dispose of hazardous vegetation and fuel from their properties. The second vegetation management activity is fuel management treatments, which refers to the reduction of living or dead wildland forest fuels to reduce the rate of spread and intensity of a fire, as well as enhance the likelihood of successful fire suppression. These treatment units are focused on the surrounding landscape of communities. No fuel management treatments are recommended in Quinson Reserve's wildland-urban interface, as the fire risk analysis shows fuel types that are mostly low risk. These are dominated by deciduous forest stands. For Cape Mudge Village, which is shown on the map in this slide, 4 treatment units are recommended in the conifer-dominated fuel types surrounding the structures. Weewakai Nation should apply for funding to have these areas prescribed for treatment and then move forwards with implementation of those treatments. The wildfire behavior threat analysis showed that 16% of Cape Mudge Village's wildland-urban interface and 5% of Quinson Reserve's wildland-urban interface have a moderate wildfire risk class or higher. However, since both communities are adjacent to somewhat continuous forested land, and the most likely ignition source of a wildfire is from human activity, and the effects of climate change in the area are leading to hotter, drier, and longer summers, with higher wildfire risks, wildfire is still a very real threat. Additionally, evacuation of Cape Mudge Village is concerning, as a ferry with limited capacity or a boat is required to reach more extensive emergency services on Vancouver Island. Overall, fire smart education, fire smart building materials, and vegetation management in the home and critical infrastructure and ignition zones are the most important factors towards structures and people surviving a wildfire event in both Cape Mudge Village and Quinson Reserve, and also those structures and people not starting one that spreads into the greater landscape. This wildfire resiliency plan sets the stage for implementing important, relevant actions to increase awareness of wildfire risk and increase Weewakai Nation's wildfire preparedness and resiliency. Thank you.